You may have seen in the previous video I was talking about pen lifts, and I was talking about how this one, very nice in many ways, but it's a brushless servo, needs quite a high voltage, and it can also, if it's locked, it can draw a terrifying amount of power. So it's a little bit tricky to use, it's a little bit tricky to set up. It's very effective, but it wasn't something that I was super comfortable with actually recommending, because it involves some slightly complex ways to get the servo actually set up and running with the plotter board that I use. The previous setup was something like you see here. This is an older EiBotBoard clone that I don't use anymore because I have another one which is nicer. It was kind of set up like this. You'd put your power into there, which would be the standard 12 volts or so, and that would get passed straight through to here to power the steppers and the rest of the board. And then this over here, which looks okay from the top, but if you look underneath, not nice. What this is doing is taking the ground and the signal for the servo into this board, and then through these pins here, it's injecting the voltage from one of these. I was only using one of them, the other one was for an experiment which didn't come out. But in replacing the 5 volts that's coming from the EiBotBoard, in fact, literally you can see it's not even connected, it's literally throwing it away. But it's taking that 5 volts, not using it, and then the 5 volt, what would be 5 volt, the positive output, is being replaced with 7 or 8 volts that's coming from here. And that was making it significantly easier to run that brushless servo, which would absolutely not be happy at 5 volts. And these can do a couple of amps, which is enough to keep the big beefy brushless servo happy. However, as you can see, it's kind of nasty. This is not very nice. It's not very well put together. It was something that, as a result, I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable about sharing, because it gave a possibility of people doing something wrong, and if you connect the wrong voltage in the wrong place, you can blow things up. These boards are expensive, the servos are expensive. These DC-DC converters are not expensive, but they are something that, again, you might not want to throw away. And there's also a chance, if you do something really wrong with a supply that can deliver a decent amount of power, there's then a chance that you get a wire that's just shorted and doing something very unpleasant, like burning, getting very hot. So I didn't feel super comfortable about sharing that, and as a result, I didn't actually share how to put this more beefy servo together, because I've been working on this. However, as you can see, it's not actually plugged onto the machine anymore. And the reason why I can do that is I'm not using it anymore. And that's one of the bits that I want to be able to share, because actually we can throw all this lot away because I've been doing some designing. This is something that I've actually just a little while back bought. This is a new PCB that I've had made. It's actually the first one I've designed, and it basically does exactly the same thing as the other board that I was showing you. What this does is it has a couple of sockets, which you can see here, to take in the power and then transmit it on to the EiBotBoard. It has pins here to connect one of those DC-DC converters, and again, as long as you get it the right way around, no problem. And then it does the same thing of intercepting the signal from the EiBotBoard to take the ground and the signal, and then literally just throw away its 5 volts. The 5 volt pin here is not even connected, and then the positive for the output is connected to the output from the board. And as a result, this is a lot easier to share. So I put it together. There's actually one on the machine, and it's working at the moment. It's actually what I've been using for a while. It's actually significantly easier. This is the board in place, so you can see there's the pass-through here. This is just looping straight out and coming back. That's a male-to-male power adapter that I got. Literally, it's just a straight cable. And then the supply power goes into the other socket. I'm not going to connect it because I'm not actually using it at the moment. And so you do that, what that will do is then power this board for the servo, and then it'll also power the EiBotBoard as well. Which I think I may have mentioned in some previous videos on that. This is a clone that has replaceable steppers, and so these stepper drivers are TMC 2209s, which are a lot quieter, even in this pretty unsophisticated mode. They're just being used in step and direction mode. They're not using the fancy UART controls, which means you don't get auto homing and all this type of stuff. But basically that then works exactly the same way as a standard EiBotBoard. and you're just taking the signal. In this case, it's taking the brushless signal. Can I just show you that? Yeah, there we go. You can see it's connected not to the set of pins on the end, but to the third ones along, which is the higher frequency brushless servo signal. That's getting passed through into the board. I did realise that I probably should have marked which one's which, so you can see I've marked ground and plus voltage there for both. But it takes the signal and then adds in, as I mentioned, adds in the higher voltage output from the DC-DC converter on the cable that goes through to the servo, and everything works. It's actually pretty easy, and what I'm planning to do is to make the KiCad designs available. So if you want to do one of those, you can potentially use the offers of whatever PCB manufacturing company you want to use. You will have to buy some parts, so you need to buy a couple of these sockets, which are, as far as I can tell, pretty standard. You need to buy one of these DC-DC converters, and they're not a lot. They're only a couple of pounds each. And then you need a couple of 3-pin pin headers to be able to connect the servo cables together. But what that means is it should be pretty easy for anybody who wants to run a higher voltage servo, whether it's coreless or brushless, to be able to use that with an EiBotBoard a lot more easily. And it means that I can feel a little bit happier about sharing something that doesn't involve people having to make sure that a bunch of wires are all done in exactly the right place.